Hello everyone, thanks for joining me on today's fight. Up on deck, we've got the F-100D Superstaver from Grinnelli Designs, and we are going to be fighting a Mirage F1. First off, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the fight, thank you everybody for those of you who have subscribed. I also extend my appreciation to those of you who subscribed to me from the beginning. Thank you for sticking with me as we slowly pivot the channel away from the traditional model review format to something a little more dynamic. I also, unfortunately, can't keep making model videos because I, like most people, have a limited budget. So something had to happen there, and I'll still make the occasional model review, but the fun times I have in DCS are going to be what you're going to see mostly, like today's dogfight with a Mirage F1. So learning the F-100 is a lot of fun, and as we get to the merge here, we're going to prove out that the F-100 is a lot more capable in air-to-air than most people give it credit for. I think what's happened is most of the community has decided that the F-100 is a ground pounder, and therefore and thus it's supposed to be bad at air-to-air, which is a curious position because essentially the F-100 is a steampunk predecessor to the modern F-16, and it kind of has the same general development background. The F-100, like the modern F-16, got its start as an air superiority fighter, which was later repurposed into the air-to-ground mission. And while the F-100 is best known in all of its combat regimes in Turkey, France, and the US as an air-to-ground airplane mostly, it primarily was built for air-to-air. And as you can see in this fight, it is definitely very capable at that, as long as you bear the airplane's limitations in mind. And that's a point that's going to come up later in the video. So as we come up here, got the Mirage F1. You can see we're already gaining angles on them. We're not even maybe 3 turns into the fight. So I've got a I've got an F100 here with pylons and AIM-9s. So it's not completely clean, and that's by design. When I do my dogfight videos, I try to fly in a realistic configuration, which is not a completely clean airplane. Because if you're flying this airplane in a multiplayer session or in a single player combat session, odds are you're going to have pylons for some reason or another. So as much as I would like to say that everybody saddles up and flies clean, realistically, unless you're doing a deliberate air-to-air mission, you're probably not going to be doing that. So if you see my videos and you see the airplane's performance, this is going to be reflective of what an aircraft would be if it had, you know, pylons from Jettison stuff on it. So yeah, like that way when you watch this, you can actually achieve this instead of it being just kind of a paper exercise where you see me fly this very clean, artificially configured airplane around, but you can't do the same thing because you're flying with rails on. So all that minutia aside, you can see how the F-100 is still very capable in the angles fight. As you might imagine, it is not a energy fighter, especially against the Cold War stuff like this Mirage F1, which utterly dunks the F-100 in thrust and power. So we're not going to play the rate fight game, much as it would probably be okay. All that would do is just prolong the fight, because the Mirage F1 could fly around all day, every day with that big ATAR engine, and you know, ultimately what would happen is we'd end up in a slow speed kind of evolution anyway. So we may as well just go into the low speed regime and just play the angles fight right off the jump. And here we are, gaining on the Mirage. I've got the stick all the way back. At this point, I am strictly using rudder to maneuver. I am not using the ailerons or left or right stick to roll the jet. And you see we are right on his 6. So the Mirage here, he does some last minute Maverick crap to get me off, and you know, I'm basically pulling the stick back to try to stay within it, but I can't because his Mirage is basically just hanging on his engine, and I don't have a big ATAR to just sit on the thrust of and point my nose at. So I'm just gonna go into the vertical, which looking back I probably should have just done that at first, but this is my first fight against the Mirage and the F-100, and you can see here that going into the vertical, the F-100 is surprisingly gnarly. I can hit the afterburner, go nose up, and the cool thing about the F-100 right here is that even though I am like hanging, I'm just dancing on the rudder and pointing nose up. Even with that, I can just go full afterburner and still unload and climb. Be sure that when you unload in this airplane, you still maintain 1G, because otherwise you will stall the engine out. So yeah, this thing, I don't know where, I'm not gonna say I don't know, I know why. People have read the history of it and they drew the conclusion that it's only air to ground, and that's understandable, but that's not really the case as you see in this fight. We are definitely putting the hurt on the Mirage here, and got stick back, again rolling the throttle, using some of the vertical, which is not something I expected I'd be able to do in this airplane, but just look at this. The F-100 is a surprisingly honest and capable BFM dance partner if you bear its limitations in mind. So we're just going to come around the circle here. And you see, we are gaining on him. Again, not something I expected to be able to do at the beginning of this fight, but here we are. So in the low speed regime, the F-100 is a frickin' beast, and as some have noted already, it can hold a rate fight pretty well. So interestingly enough, these were able to do 9Gs in the drone program back in the 80s. So it wasn't an issue to do 9Gs for the drones because they were unmanned. So, you know, and since they're drones, they're decommissioned airplanes, preserving the aircraft wasn't really a priority. So at this point, I'm figuring he's going to burn in, but he doesn't, kind of surprisingly. And then I just aim my jet behind his. But once again, when it comes to just doing the vertical nose pointing business, he's better at it because he's got a big ATAR engine to sit on when he points his nose up. However, my vertical acceleration from this speed to nose up is higher, so he can just point his nose and sit on the engine. I can actually gain altitude from going nose up because the F-100 is just that, you know, it's just that aerodynamically better at this airspeed than his big Mirage is. So it's kind of interesting how these fights play out, because when you look at them on paper, I would not have thought that this would happen. I would think the Mirage should be the one doing the vertical stuff, but you know, aerodynamics matters, people. So coming up here, just gotta loop in the vertical, roll on down. Once again, I'm just using the rudder here. Question for those of you in the comments: do you all find the canopy to be a bit dirty? And first off, I think maybe the real question is, do you find the canopy to be too dirty? Because I figure, I've never flown an F-100 in real military service, so maybe that's just what they look like in general, but there's quite a bit of smudges and, you know, marks and things on the canopy, and that may be normal. I mean, it's just, you know, I never flew these operationally, so maybe it's what happens over time when you get some miles and hours on the jet. But dogfighting like this is a bit difficult when you've got all these smudges hampering your ability to acquire the other person, especially when they're near or coming out of or going into the sun. So what are you guys' thoughts on that? Tell me in the comments. Another point that I'm going to make about the F-100 that surprises me is the fuel economy. It's a strange thing to say when you're talking about dogfighting, but the F-4 that I was flying before this plane, by generally about now, I would either be out of gas or disengaging because I would be on the verge of running out of gas, because that airplane will burn all its fuel in full afterburner in about 8 minutes. And right now we're approximately just over 9 minutes into the fight, and I'm still engaging with pretty decent fuel left in the tank. So something to be said about the F-100, if you use it in an air-to-air capacity and you get into a fight, you do have some pretty good endurance. You're not necessarily at the whim of needing to disengage quick because your fuel tank's going to run dry. Something like an F-100 or an F-4 or, you know, F-16 maybe, you probably would be, you'd be at risk of flaming out because you're out of gas. But with the J-57 and this old school airplane and the fuel capacity it has, we can stick in the fight for a while. And we see here that we're in a bit of a roller here with the Mirage, which I'm not too worried about now. I might have been when I started this fight, but now, given the the nose authority of this F-100 at slow speeds, I am not terribly concerned. If you put the flaps down below about 250 knots, you can really get some good angles, but just bear in mind that you'll need to pull them up when you go fast, or you're going to damage them. And if you damage them, then they'll be stuck in the down position until you land, so that'll of course limit your top speed. Up to you. If given the circumstances of the fight, it's better to fly home with a damaged flap than it is to be able to go fast and get shot down or crash. So get an angle there. One of the limitations of the F-100 that really comes clear when you do this stuff is you can't do negative G maneuvers. That's because if you do negative G, you will stall the engine. And if you stall the engine, you're going to find yourself in a terrible position in a dogfight, because it takes a few minutes for the air restart procedure to do its thing, at which time you are basically flying with no engine power. So after a few minutes of flying with no engine power, you can slowly bring the throttles up, and then you'll have your engine back and you can resume doing what you're doing. If you're flying just straight and level at 15,000 feet, it's just a nuisance. At this altitude in a BFM engagement, it is a major problem if you stall the motor, especially at low altitude. So you don't want to have that happen, but it also means that if you are in a position where you get a gun solution on somebody, and the only thing you need to do is just put the nose down just a little bit to make the rounds work, you really can't do that, because it's very easy to get greedy, push the nose in, try to get your gun shot, and then stall your engine when you are nose low at low altitude in a dogfight. That's just a recipe for for losing by default here. So as we get into a vertical roller here, again, I would not have thought the F-100 would be able to hang with an F1 like this, but here we are. So it's one of the reasons why I share these videos, because what you read in the stat cards isn't necessarily how the fight goes. So I once read a story of a Air National Guard pilot with a few hundred hours, or a few thousand hours I should say, winning against an F-15 Eagle back in the day. And looking at this, I can see it, because I am giving this Mirage fits, and this is literally my 13th sortie in the jet ever. So as I practice with this, I intend to just focus on flying the F-100 and just getting better at it for the next, probably next year, just like I did with the F-4. And I'm really looking forward to what this plane can do once you understand how to really work it. So line it up here. Put some bullets in him. And he's still freaking flying. Great. Okay, cool. So apparently his Mirage F1 is made from the spirit of Napoleon. We're just gonna keep turning here. Filled him full of 20mm American lead, and he's still flying. But there you go. I bet most of us, myself included, didn't think we'd be able to put a Mirage F1 out of business like that, but there you go. And there we go. My engine dies. So yeah, now I have to complete the air restart procedure, and this is a terrible corner to be in, because now I have to wait for my engine to come back, and I am still dogfighting this Mirage. So my choices are fly straight and level, conserve my altitude and energy when my engine comes back, and then get shot, or maneuver, survive the dogfight, and then stall, and then promptly die with a fully functional engine. See what my choices are here. Either way, it's pretty much the end of the fight for me, and at this altitude, not very many options on the table, and there you go. You see the choice I made, and like the world of John Wick, consequences. Thanks for watching, everybody.